The wolf pack of 13 U-boats patrolled the Atlantic when it detected convoy SC-107, comprising 42 ships and an escort of 5 warships. It had departed from Canada and was bound for the United Kingdom to deliver valuable supplies to support the war effort. The commerce raiders went swiftly after them, recruiting the help of 3 other submarines along the way. One day later, SC-107 was sighted. Still, the U-boats had to refrain from the attack after Allied aircraft broke off the initial charge of 2 hunters, destroying them from above. Nonetheless, when the third night came, the Wolfpack attacked with unparalleled coordination, sinking ship after ship to the dismay of the 5 escorts. The restless submarines kept isolating the convoy as the hours went by, fully committed to sinking every one of the 42 ships. The question was, did they have enough torpedoes to achieve the task? Great War U-boats. German submarines, or U-boats, were a new weapon in World War I that threatened Allied naval supremacy in trade routes. Although developed during the 19th century, the Prussians fully developed them for all-out warfare. The Kaiser and his military staff knew they could not overpower the British Royal Navy in open combat. They decided to develop a sophisticated submarine fleet to overcome the numerical superiority of the British. U-boats generally operated in the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Still, they were also present in the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea to block Allied shipping. During the early years of the war, German U-boats surfaced before attacking merchant ships to allow the crew to escape. Nevertheless, the Kaiser allowed unrestricted submarine warfare as American shipping of food and war assets increased to help Britain. The reason behind this change was the supposed neutrality of the U.S. under President Wilson. From there on, U-boats were allowed to open fire without warning against any unidentified vessel or ships deemed to be carrying supplies to the enemy. Outnumbered. U-boats employed torpedoes and mines to sink enemy ships. Their tactics were so successful that Britain would have almost surrendered without the U.S. entry into the war, and the Kaiser's doubts about continuing unrestricted submarine warfare. The German submarines sank almost 13 million tons of shipping between 1914 and 1918, forcing the Allied forces to divert resources and follow other naval routes to avoid interception. However, U-boats also faced many challenges, such as limited range, poor communication, mechanical failures, and countermeasures from the Allies, like convoys, depth charges, and hydrophones. U-boats were ultimately defeated by the superior numbers and technology of the Allied navies. By the war's end, Germany had lost 178 submarines and 5,000 crew members. Despite losing the war, German naval commanders realized that a highly trained and technologically advanced U-boat fleet was enough to bring the Royal Navy into submission. The Wolfpack. During the post-war period, Germany was forbidden from possessing U-boats. Still, German naval officers, such as veteran Karl Dönitz, kept studying the triumphs and tactics of World War I submarine crews for an upcoming conflict. With the rise of the Kriegsmarine in the early 1930s, Dönitz perfected his studies and devised the Rudeltaktik, or pack tactic. During the previous conflict, U-boats generally operated alone in a specific sector, and coordination with other crews was limited. Dönitz's Wolfpack tactic was meant to change all that. Submarines would now operate in close coordination to hunt down convoys and relay the location of enemy vessels to other U-boats to lock down a specific shipping route. For the Wolfpack tactics to succeed, the Kriegsmarine required new types of submarines with improved range, detection technology, armor, and weaponry. At first, Germany set up several submarine design offices in foreign countries to continue the development of new vessels and torpedoes to avoid the restrictions of the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. Submarine classes. The Kriegsmarine began training crews with this new technology. The Type 1 submarines were the first post-war prototypes that paved the way for the iconic Type 7 U-boat submarine, the workhorse of the German submarine fleet, with over 700 produced by the end of World War II in 1945. Other classes, such as Type 9 and Type 10, were employed for long-range operations and specific purposes, such as mine layers or cargo transport. As the war went on, the Type 21 electroboat would be introduced to increase the survivability of crews by favoring submerged performance thanks to increased battery capacity and speed. Another innovation of German U-boats was the mass introduction of the snorkel, inspired by Dutch submarines. This retractable pipe supplied air to the diesel engines. During the first years of the war, the Kriegsmarine employed standard torpedoes fitted with impact or magnetic triggers. The first detonated the warhead upon contact, while the second did so when sensing a sudden change in the magnetic field within a specific radius. By the time the Americans landed in Europe, the U-boat crews had begun employing the G7T5 acoustic homing torpedo, designed to wreck escort ships by heading in a straight line and heading for the location where the loudest noise was detected. The battle for the Atlantic. The dispute for the hegemony of the Atlantic and the North Sea began as soon as the Third Reich invaded Poland in September 1939. Following the declaration of war by France and the United Kingdom against Germany, U-boats began sinking vessels in the Atlantic and the North Sea. In October 1939, the effectiveness of U-boats was established after Captain Gunther Prine and his U-47 made their way to Scapa Flow, the most important British naval base in Europe, completely undetected, and destroyed the battleship Royal Oak. Like in World War I, the U-boat crews surfaced when approaching a ship to inspect it. The crew was ordered out before being sunk if weapons or supplies were detected. Nevertheless, the tactics soon changed once freighters, tankers, and merchant ships began to be escorted by Royal Navy warships equipped with sonar, forcing the Kriegsmarine to be precise and attack in coordinated wolf packs that went after a single convoy. Ace tactics. During 1940 and 1941, U-boat captains such as Otto Kretschmer began to employ an unconventional tactic to avoid detection by sonar: remain surfaced when approaching an enemy convoy. Kretschmer, a U-boat ace, established 11 points of submarine warfare to achieve success in the sea and maximize damage against enemy shipping. One of his points remarked that the optimal time to attack convoys was during the night, and that one must do so by approaching from the dark side of the enemy ships, so that U-boats remained in the shadow and the target was silhouetted. The captain also emphasized the most desirable targets were those in the middle of the convoy to break the formation and conceal the position of the attacking submarine so that it could slip away from the formation without damage. Kretschmer also highlighted that once the attack had begun, U-boats had to remain surfaced to stay on the target, noting that it was harder for enemy ships to spot a submarine than the other way around. Captain Prine also employed these tactics, which led to many of his career's successes, such as the destruction of 11 ships from convoy HX-72 by a wolf pack of 4 submarines, sending over 72,000 tons worth of supplies for the British war effort to the bottom of the sea. The introduction of the new submarine warfare tactics brought what U-boat crews dubbed the happy time between 1940 and 1941. One of the highlights of this period was the interception of convoy SC-7 in October 1940 by a wolf pack of 8 U-boats. Between October 16th and 19th, the U-boats hunted down SC-7, sinking 20 out of 35 cargo ships, proving that Dönitz' promise of bringing the UK into submission with a fleet of about 300 submarines was feasible. In 1940, the German submarines sank 492 ships, sending over 2.38 million tons of supplies to the depths at the cost of 26 submarines. Wolf hunting. Despite the success of the U-boats, the tide began to change in mid-1941 with the mass introduction of surface radar and the commissioning of 50 American destroyers incorporated into the Royal Navy to patrol the Atlantic. The heaviest blow to the U-boat crews came with the capture of an Enigma machine that allowed British and later American forces to listen to encrypted German communications and figure out their operations. Nevertheless, the Wolfpack tactic still reigned over the ocean. The submarine packs patrolled one portion of the ocean in a long line stretched 16 kilometers, bolstering visibility and coordination when enemy vessels were detected. In October 1942, SC-107, comprising 42 ships, was spotted by a Wolfpack of 16 U-boats that quickly went after them. Although Allied aircraft managed to sink 2 of them, the U-boats picked off the merchant ships at night. The ships began to go down one by one, and the 5 escort ships proved incapable of fending off the hunting party. In 5 days, the U-boats sent 15 ships to the depths and severely damaged another 5. The tables turned when the U.S. Navy entered the conflict and began deploying ships to the Atlantic, stretching the area of operations of the German Wolfpacks. Coupled with the decryption of the Enigma machine and the sinking of some of the Kriegsmarine's most valuable surface vessels, the U-boat supremacy began to fade away. When the war ended in 1945, the U-boat fleet had lost over 793 U-boats and over 28,000 submariners, representing a 75% casualty rate, the highest of any branch of the German military during the conflict.